Welcome to the Sheff United Way. My name is Hal. Sheffield United's accounts for 2022-23 have been filed at Companies House to help us, mainly me, delve into them and make sense of the numbers. Again, mainly me. We are delighted to welcome University of Liverpool football finance lecturer and from the podcast, The Price of Football, the co-host. What a pleasure this is. Kieran Maguire, how are you, sir?
I'm irritatingly cheerful, which sounds a bit of a strange thing, but it really annoys my wife that I'm never in a bad mood.
I'm the same.
And she says it's like living with Tigger, and it sort of wears you down after a while.
Yeah.
Show your inner Eeyore occasionally, but yeah, all is good. I'm quite looking forward to a week or two off football, with the international break. So making the most of it, like most many people, I'd imagine.
I've been compared to Tim Nice but Dim, if you can remember.
I certainly can. Yes.
So I think you've come off better. You've definitely come. Your wife is kinder, I think. Now, that's why I'm going to struggle with these, and I'm going to need your help. And I think we'll just dive straight in. I'm going to apologise in advance if any of these questions seem too detailed. Obviously, I am a Sheffield United fan, so my interest is just in this. But I know that you, having regularly been a listener as I am to The Price of Football, you have to look at a lot of accounts for a lot of clubs. So good luck is what I'm going to say as we head forward with this one. And I think Sheffield United's owner, Prince Abdullah, has now made it very clear for a number of years, actually, that the club is for sale. And when we look at these accounts, I think the kind of headlines and certainly things that you've shared on Twitter is there are losses in there. What has been your major takeaway from looking at Sheffield United's accounts?
It was a good year to get promoted. Would be my first takeaway, and I'm not going to win a Nobel Prize for that piece of insight, I'm sure. Running a football club in the Championship is running a casino operation, or rather being a punter at a casino. The average losses in the Championship are £476,000 a week. And that's the average. And you've got some clubs losing £1 million a week. So it's a really tough division to be in. Sheffield United have an owner that, in theory, I think that you rightly said he's looking for a takeover. He's still putting around more than £20 million in the club itself. You think, well, hold on, we've got parachute payments. We had a good season. How come we're losing that amount of money? And it simply comes down to the costs of running a football club, if you want to be successful, are significant. And on the back of being promoted, a load of more costs kick in, which accelerate those losses, because there's promotion bonuses and add-ons that will now become crystallized on certain transfers and things like that. So it's a spectacularly silly business, football. The silliest part of the silly business is the Championship itself, and you have to ask yourself why. And the reason why is that the step up, the difference between the Championship, where a non-parachute payment receiving club's going to be getting £8 million a year in TV money, to the Premier League, where you're going to get a minimum of 100 million. And when Sheffield United went up the last time, their first season, it was a really good season. You'll get substantially more than 100 million. You can see why owners, they'll get a phone call from the manager in January, and the manager say, look, we're 7th or 8th. I've seen this really tasty midfield player. His agent's looking for 20 grand a week. We might be able to get him for 18. Could be the difference between getting into the playoffs or not. And it costs £6 million, and the owner's going, I quite like the idea of Manchester United and Chelsea and City and Liverpool and Arsenal coming to the ground next season. And that's no disrespect to the clubs in the Championship, because in my view, the Championship's the most exciting division in English football in many regards. And they'll say, common sense goes out the window. let's go and sign them. And then only 3 teams can get promoted, which means that there's an awful lot of players who didn't make the difference that the manager thought that they were going to, but you've still got that transfer fee, you've still got those wages, you've still got those overheads of running the club, and therefore you're making big losses.
You just mentioned transfers, so I'll touch on that, because compared to other clubs, Sheffield United don't seem to spend a lot on transfer fees, yet these losses look huge. Why is that?
Well, included in the losses are the legacies of buying players from previous seasons. Because of the way that the transfer market operates, if I sign a player for £20 million, and Sheffield United have signed 1 or 2 when they were in the Premier League, and you put them on a 4-year contract, what you say is, well, we're going to show that as a cost of 20 divided by 4, we've got a cost of £5 million a year. And we call that amortization. So in the case of Sheffield United, that total expense in 22-23, even though Sheffield United only signed players, new players coming in for 4 million, the cost of your legacy players was 18. So that's a lot of money. That's what twice the amount of money that the club generated through ticket sales is going on the way that they account for transfer fees. And then you add on the wages, and again you've got players for whom it's not worked out. And I'll never criticise a player, because I'm got a really lucky job. I teach professional footballers. I teach managers, and you actually realise you're dealing with a bit like to me and you, husbands, dads, boyfriends, brothers, sons, and I don't think any of us go to work each morning with the intention of not trying. So sometimes things don't work out, and you're left with a player who, for whatever reason, hasn't settled in. Their market value's gone down. Nobody's willing to match the wages they're already on, because their value in the market has gone down, and therefore they sit out that 4 or 5 year contract on big wages. But the fans have forgotten about them because they're not in the first team, or they're only coming on occasionally, or you signed them 2 years ago and you've forgotten that fee. And those costs are still being incurred by the club.
The income, let's talk about something positive, was £64 million, if I've read that right. But that's down by £2.5 million on the year before. But shouldn't we have expected it to fall more? Because don't parachute payments drop in the second year after relegation?
Yeah, the way that it works is that as far as parachute payments are concerned, you get around about 42, 43 million pounds in year 1. That drops to around about 34 in year 2. And if you have been in the Premier League for more than 1 year, you get a 3rd year of parachute payments, which are around about 16. So that's that position we're in. So Sheffield United were in their 2nd year of parachute. So we did see a decline in parachute value of around about 8 million quid, which was in line with expectations. Where the club did well was good cup run.
Yeah,
that made a difference. So the money from ticket sales went up. The sponsorship money was good last year. Now, you'll know the reason for that much more than I would, but they seem to do well there. And I think they had a few events. Again, we're looking from the period from the 1st of July 2022 to the 30th of June 2023. I think when I read the accounts, there was a couple of matches from the Women's Euros.
Yep.
That would have brought in additional money. Def Leppard had a concert. Appreciates Homecoming band. They made money from that as well. And on the back of that, the use of the stadium was higher than in previous years, and that again helped to soften the blow of the quite significant reduction in parachutes.
Just taking all of this in, you really are so right when you said at the beginning, a good season to get promotion. I mean, sometimes I'm wondering what we'd be talking about right now had we not gone up.
Well, I mean, we'd actually be talking about a better set of accounts. And this is sort of one of the paradoxes of football, because the promotion bonuses, which are included in these figures, are probably in the region of at least £10 million, could be 12, 13. So the wage bill reflects the fact that the club went back to the Premier League and all of those bonuses which are in contracts kicked in. So we would actually been showing a better set of accounts, but 23-24, with that big drop in parachutes from 34 to 16, I think things wouldn't have been as great unless the club had been in the position where it had started to shift off the payroll some of the players who were on Premier League contracts. And yes, they will have relegation clauses in contracts, but I spoke to a chief executive of a club which has been in both the Premier League and the Championship, and he says, if we're trying to get players to come to our club, whatever that club may be, they'll take no more than a 25% pay cut if the club goes down.
Yeah.
But our income potentially can be down by around about 70% within a couple of years. So that's the challenge. And if you don't get those players to come to you in the first place, you're effectively signing your note back to the Championship, because you will almost certainly be relegated.
I mean, one of the reasons why I said it's a good thing we went up is so many Sheffield United fans have said on social media and on the forums, which is where we have our voice, if we hadn't gone up, we potentially would have gone into administration. Do you put any stock into those fears?
It's always a concern. The club did borrow substantial amounts in the year. When those payments are due to the lenders, I think would be a critical issue. So the reason why football clubs go into administration, it's all to do with cash flow, and cash flow is determined by the dates at which payments are due. So without knowing those details, you can't be too confident one way or the other. Sheffield United borrowed money from the owner, borrowed money from third parties. Looking at the small print of those particular transactions would have been very critical. So it provided the owner or the owner's parties would be willing to continue to fund the losses at the club, I think they would have been okay. But never say never.
Yeah, I mean, again, I might have got this wrong, so apologies if I have. 52 million in debt to the banks, I think I read, and I reckon that'll work out at about £20 million a year in repayments. Does that sound right?
Not necessarily. I mean, the issues in relation to bank loans are quite complex, because quite often some of the lenders will have what we refer to as bullet loans. And a bullet loan it's a bit like taking out an interest-only mortgage for anybody that's ever taken one of those out. So you're paying interest, and then for a mortgage in 25 years' time, or in a loan, it could be in 3 or 4 years' time. Right, we want our money back now. Having said that, provided you've always met your interest payments, and we've seen this in respect of Premier League clubs, what the lender will say, we've lent you 50 million quid, we're willing to re-lend it to you because you've always been a good payer. So if you take a look at Manchester United and Spurs, probably the two biggest borrowers in the Premier League, why go to the trouble if you're that bank of saying, right, we want the money back now? Because what's the bank going to do with the money? Banks only make profits by lending, so they just have to go and find somebody else to lend it to. Provided you've always met your repayments, loans can often be rescheduled. So it's not necessarily a bad piece. They only had to go and repay about £7.5 million of loans in 23-24. So that was feasible either out of what remained of the parachute payments or it given the indication that the owner was still willing to fund the club.
I looked online again for ideas for questions to pose at you, and this one kept coming up. So whilst I wouldn't necessarily have asked this at this point, it feels like from what you've just said, it might make sense. Why do you think Sheffield United's transfer spend this summer was very low, based on what we've spoken about before? For a Premier League team, pretty low.
Yeah, it was low. Again, it comes down to cash flow. When a club is promoted to the Premier League, they actually get quite a nice welcoming present from the league itself. And people say, well, why is this? And the reason is that the Premier League itself gets a large amount of money before the start of the season from the broadcasters. Because if you look at Sky's business model, what are they going to do during the second half of May, June and July? They've got nothing to do apart from talk about the transfer market. Can they influence the transfer market? Or if they give a load of money to the Premier League, which in turn gives it to all the clubs have now effectively, so we've started the motor. So Sheffield United will have received some cash. What it chooses to do with that cash, it comes down to somebody at a very senior level making a decision. Now, has that money been used to repay loans? We don't know. So the owner is in for a significant amount of money, might have decided to take that out. Equally, it could be that they were in discussions with potential new buyers. And again, I'll use this house analogy, which is a bit of a cop-out. If you're in the process of selling your house, would you go and put in a new kitchen? Because you're not going to get your money back from it. So therefore, had there been progress with regards to potential sale of the club, possibly the new owners might have said, well, we want to be in charge of the transfer budget. We want to say yay or nay to the signings of individual players. And then we know that the deal with 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗲-𝗴cie
𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗃, yeah, because you mentioned this on your Twitter account when you highlighted the fact that he put down a deposit of almost £9 million.
I know. It's a big sum of money. Now, his background, I think, is best described as interesting, and that does an awful lot of heavy lifting. And clearly, things have not worked out with regards to the accuracy of some of his claims in respect of his wealth. But was the club worried that it might have to go and repay him, and therefore it was keeping money back? I think there's lots of unanswered questions. The club is in a position to put these questions to bed. They're the best people to ask. I'm not trying to sell anything here, but we are coming up to South Yorkshire to do a live Price of Football show in the next month or two, and perhaps we'll be closer to getting some answers by then.
Interesting. All right. Now, the club has recently announced it will reopen the hotel, which I used to love staying in. Presumably, income from that, every time my wife wants to go to Bramall Lane, will help the club. I mean, do you have any idea how much of a difference this will make, if any, at all?
Marginal.
Okay.
I have to be honest.
I thought you might say that. Yeah.
It's one of these things that look good on paper. The majority of hotels don't make a lot of money.
Okay.
So why should it be any different? So they might make a wee bit of, the hotel industry is not like the football industry. Ultimately, if you are making losses on a regular basis, you close down the hotel, and everybody says that's a shame. With football clubs, if you're losing money, we say we're not going to close down the football club. It's too important. So yes, there is a bit of money to be made. Yes, it's good in terms of converting a business which generates revenue 25 to 30 times a year from home fixtures to one which is generating money 360 days a year. But at the same time, you've got the cost of running the hotel. You've You've got the fact that you've got unoccupied beds at times, but you still got to pay your staff. So it's not the panacea that is sometimes painted by various people who perhaps haven't run a hotel themselves. And for the sake of complete transparency, I used to be an insolvency accountant. I was the administrator, and I've run an awful lot of hotels during the period, because it's a seasonal industry. It's quite a precarious activity, and so on. So every little helps. That's great. Is it a game changer? No. And it's the same issue I've been having with Aston Villa fans. They're moving from Castore to Adidas as their kit supplier, and they think millions. No, Adidas are in it to make money, not to give you money, to make money for themselves. So don't think that that's going to be a game changer either.
I mean, the club has also said it's agreed to buy a new academy site. So I've just mentioned that we've got this hotel, got the academy site. Where is the money coming from, do you think, for these?
Well, yeah, there could be some more third-party loans. There could be some more loans coming in from Prince Abdullah. We will have to wait and see. I would be surprised if third parties would be willing to put more money into the club, given the fact that it's got a £45 million loan long term and short term repayments of 7 to 8, as we've already discussed. Because when you are lending money, one of the things you do is you say, well, okay, what's worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is the club does go into administration, in which case you flog off the assets. How much would we get? Would we get our money back? And there's quite a few financial institutions in the UK who will not lend to football clubs because it's seen as such a high risk industry, and it's also a high profile industry. Yet you do not want to be the bank manager that nudges a football club into administration. That's one way to upset. If half of your fan base could be fans of that club, and they'll say, well, this is HSBC, or we'll take our business to Barclays. So banks themselves are actually very wary of the football industry. So that's why I think a third party loan from a non-commercial bank, or further funds from the owner would be the most logical sources.
And under financial fair play, I believe you're only allowed to lose 13 million a season in the Championship. This is obviously a much higher loss. Are we in danger of losing points in the future, like Everton and Forest?
I don't think so. And the reason why I say that, Hal, is if we go back to sort of the start of the conversation, we said, well, the club spent probably 10-12 million pounds on promotion bonuses. Promotion bonuses are specifically excluded, as are your infrastructure costs. Sheffield United, we mentioned the academy and so on. The academy costs are excluded. Sheffield United have got a women's team; those costs are excluded. The work which is done in the community schemes run by clubs, again, that's all ring fenced. So I don't think that they're in a particularly bad position. And also, you're assessed over 3 years. Sheffield United did well financially when they were in the Premier League. And we've still got, of course, 1 year's worth of Premier League income to include within these calculations.
Yeah, but the fear is when we go down, will we make a similar loss again next season unless we sell players, or has a season in the Premier League cleared the decks?
It won't have cleared the decks in terms of debt. It won't have cleared the decks in terms of payroll costs, and that brings us back to the earlier part of the conversation. We said, well, there hasn't been a significant investment in talent, and the club far better than I do. But even I picked up on the social media grapevine, why did we go and sell our 2 best players and didn't recruit this summer? So that those players will have been on good wages, so that cost. So I would expect, even if the club are relegated, and without being too rude, I think most Sheffield United fans are expecting relegation, that I expect the finances for 23-24 will be quite good, because again, you will have players on contracts which are linked to avoiding relegation, so those clauses won't kick in. You've still got the benefit of being in the Premier League for a year, and all of the benefits that come along with that.
what percentage debt revenue ratio is one that Sheffield United would be able to manage going forward while remaining sustainable without large scale player sales every summer?
I don't think debt is the issue here, because it's debt repayment, and when is that debt repayment due? That dictates to you your cash flow. As far as wages as a proportion of revenue, Sheffield United's is actually, it's good by Championship standards for last season, although Championship standards are pretty atrocious.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Because 10 years out of the last 11 clubs in the Championship on average have spent more than £100 on wages for every £100 that comes through the door. You would not do the same in any other industry.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. I could talk to you all day, but thank you so much. Sheffield United Account 2022-23 with University of Liverpool Football Finance lecturer. Also check out the podcast, Price of Football. Kieran Maguire, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hal. Cheers.